Hey friends, welcome to Bokeh, a podcast exploring the ever-blurring lines between the personal and business lives of professional photographers. This is your host, Nathan Holritz, and I'm happy that you can join me today in connecting with photographers and entrepreneurs as we discuss photography, business, and, oh yeah, that sometimes messy thing that we call life. This podcast, it's brought to you by Photographers Edit, custom image editing for the wedding and portrait photographer. Just visit photographersedit.com. All right, Bokeh Podcast listeners, we're back for yet another episode, and I'm here with who is really a brand new friend. We're becoming friends, Jodi Ramos. Jodi, thank you so much for making time for the Bokeh Podcast.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
I'm excited. I know you mentioned you're a little nervous, but I think you actually have a lot to offer to the podcast, particularly with regards to what we're going to dig into today, and that is how to build a big photography business. And this may sound a little simplistic to those of you listening in, but, and I realize, in fact, Jodi and I were talking about this before we started recording, I realized that not every photographer wants to build this, this crazy big business, shooting tons of portrait sessions and tons of weddings and building a studio, a team of photographers. But there is incredible opportunity out there to do just that. And in various market segments, in fact. And when I had the opportunity to meet Jodi at a recent photography conference, and we started talking, I was like, oh, this is ultimately a really cool opportunity for conversation. So I appreciate you making time to come on, and we're going to get into that topic here in just a little bit. Just a brief introduction, if you don't mind. Whereabouts are you based, and what type of photography does your studio offer?
Sure, yeah. So we are based in Manchester, New Hampshire, so it's southern New Hampshire. And what's kind of cool about that is we're really an hour away from a lot of different great things. So, we're an hour from Boston, we're an hour from the beach, the mountains. Wow. So it's kind of a nice hub, and it allows us to kind of go to a lot of different places in a small radius. So, yep.
That reminds me actually of, I live in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So we're about 2 hours from Atlanta, 2 hours from Nashville. We have mountains around us, which is really great, but I'm missing the beach part.
Yes, and I love the beach.
That would be nice.
So, yeah, it's really fun. It keeps us on our toes. Every shoot can be a little bit different. Every wedding's a little different. It's a good place.
That's really cool. And then what type of photography does your business? And by the way, your business is Millyard Studios. We'll link to this in the show notes. It's Millyard Studios, just like it sounds, Millyard Studios on Instagram, and millyardstudios.com. We'll link to those in the show notes. But what type of photography do you all offer?
Yeah, so we do a lot of weddings. That's our main piece.
Okay.
But from there, we definitely do a lot of, newborn sessions, maternity, boudoir, family. So it's kind of, for us, it's like a little bit of every aspect in someone's life. So that's what's kind of makes it grow, is that, we kind of grow with our clients and we get to watch them as they evolve through their life. So it's really, it's a very rewarding process.
Yeah, it actually gives you an opportunity to develop a real relationship with them, I bet.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's wild to see, like I'll look back at some of my clients and think, oh my gosh, I remember doing their engagement session, and now, they're parents and they're having their second baby. Yeah. And, it's really cool.
That's really great. That's really cool. There's something, I know that we only have so much capacity for so many close relationships, but if I wasn't in a business that involved relationships and opportunity for connection with other people like that, I think I'd feel like I was missing out. I love that you have a model like that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you'd be surprised, so many people come in, of course, with their engagement, and then that evolves. But the beauty of our business is that, people come into us at all different points. So a mom might be coming in with their newborn, and then that evolves, after she has the baby. Hey, you know what? I really want to feel good about myself again and just have like a little moment. So yeah, we do, boudoir session, or, that can evolve into so many different things. So I'm always surprised in how many people want to do so many different things, and for me as a mom myself, and, you are all of these things. So it's not weird for me. I think that sometimes people think, oh, that's kind of weird. That's like a lot of different genres, but for me, I'm interested in all of those things. So why wouldn't my clients be?
Well, and this really is a great segue actually into my next question. We talk a lot about brand position, this concept called brand position on the podcast. And it's one it's not a phrase that you hear very often in the photography industry. But the interesting thing about brand position is it's not that it doesn't suggest that we have to pick one type of photography. The idea of brand position really sums up what a client or potential client, if they know about your brand, what they think about that brand, the first thing that comes to mind when they think about you. So if that's the case, then it actually gives you the freedom to potentially offer multiple types of photography as long as it fits under that one theme. So I'm curious, what is that theme? What is your business's brand position?
I mean, it really is just kind of following along in the journey of our clients' lives. And, it's something that we're working more. Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, we're working on getting some more of that like specific content on our website currently because we talk about it all the time, but that's really what we do here. And for me, it's just, I love people. I love making people feel good about themselves. We are really open here. We celebrate all kinds of different love. So for us, it's just about celebrating that with our clients, and being a part of it is truly rewarding. I mean, for me, photography has never been about me. It's been about our clients and how they feel. And it's just really important to me that, we make everybody feel beautiful and special and know that these parts of their lives are really important. And honestly, it's truly an honor to be a part of that. It can be a lot of pressure sometimes too, right?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
But that's what we do. And, we're just, we're definitely all about just making people feel good.
Ooh, I like that. But here's the thing though, I'm actually on the homepage of your site. I could see this tagline, Millyard Studios, documenting your life's journey. Like that could literally be, it could be, I mean, some people might call it a tagline, but it could also be your brand position. The other interesting thing here, just to kind of give a little bit more insight into the idea of a brand position, it's not that there is no other photography studio in the United States that focuses on something similar. But what's interesting is, first of all, you're in a local market, so you have the opportunity to create a distinct position in your local market. And then in this process of developing a brand position that does actually position your brand, and I'm speaking to you, Jodi, here, but I'm doing this for the sake of all of our listeners. So all of you that are listening in, if you pick a brand position to stand on that enables you to create distinction between your brand and those photographers around you, as long as you're the first to kind of claim that so-called hill to stand on, to say this is what our brand's about, then you have the opportunity to kind of put your flag down and then create a brand experience that backs up that statement, that position statement. So this idea of documenting your life's journey, I mean, it's a big statement, but there's so much that you can encompass underneath that position statement, and you're doing just that, which I think is a really, really cool thing. So for those of you listening in, I know I talk a lot about brand position, but this is actually a really interesting study in that. And Jodi, I think you're onto something.
Thank you. Yeah.
and you know what? I'm curious. So first of all, how many years have you been in business at this point?
Yeah. So I started the business in 2010. So so what is that? 9 years?
Yeah.
Somewhere around
years.
there. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And
so
it's really just evolved. Yeah.
And it has. And so to that point, actually, what would you say is one of the most important lessons that you've learned as a photography business owner so far? Like if you had 15 seconds to share that piece of advice with somebody else, what would it be?
I would say, and this was hard for me in the beginning, that you can really say anything you need to say as long as you smile. And it sounds silly, but saying kind of no, but like, here's why. And like, this is what we do. You just really always just want to be nice, polite. It sounds so silly, but
and
I
simple,
see it a lot.
And yet it's so powerful.
It's so true.
Yeah.
I mean, we just want to make sure we are always really positive with people. So, but that doesn't mean just saying yes to everything or, giving away everything. You can really say what you need to say as long as you're polite and nice and have just a reason why, I guess.
Well, and a bit of empathy to go along with that. It reminds me of a conversation that I've had with my team at Photographers Edit. We talk about the significance of that empathy and the way that we respond to an incoming customer ticket, for example, a support request of some kind. And instead of just answering, throwing a little bit of empathy in there. And it can be tough with text, especially if you're, replying via email or a text message, which in this day and age is quite common, but trying to figure out how to, especially if you don't have an emoji to throw in there, try to figure out how to communicate a certain amount of emotion and empathy and kindness through that. It could be a little bit of a challenge, but making the extra effort, I promise it will add up and make a difference in the way that others see your brand, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as much as, yes, we do email a lot with our clients, but the more that we can be either on the phone or have somebody come in person, I mean, it's huge. We understand not everybody can do that. And honestly, like a lot of our wedding clients aren't from the area. Like they might be vacationing or have family here. They're having a classic New England wedding. So there is a certain amount of that we're doing through email. But again, I don't really send a lot of information like just flat out through an email.
Okay.
I'm trying to communicate with people because, you have to have that humanity part in there too.
For sure. Well, you've got a great voice for it. I hear emotion in your voice, and that definitely makes a difference. It's interesting. And again, this goes back to the idea of empathy. And I know that some, for one psychological reason or another, may kind of lend themselves to being a more empathetic individual than others. But you have to understand that people can read into the tone of your voice. They can read into the tone of your text. They can certainly read into the expression on your face, especially if you're meeting in person. And just keeping that in mind and making the effort to, it's funny. This is such a nerdy thing of me, but I will literally create an expression on my face that reflects the text message that I'm sending. And it's kind of a habit that I've developed, but it's this idea of kind of shifting into the mindset of, or into the emotion of the moment in that text message conversation. And I think we can kind of do that across the board, whether it's in person or via email or text. If we shift our mind into that kind of positive, happy, kind state, even if it's for the moment, there may be other things going on, it can make an impact in the way that we engage with somebody else. And I think that's really a great piece of advice. Time. I mean, I know that, and we're going to get into this, you've got an extremely busy business, and amidst all of that craziness, how do you go about finding a little bit of time for yourself, for your family? Do you have a workflow tip or technique that you can share with our listeners that has enabled you to find more time in your life?
Definitely. And this is huge. It's probably the most important thing, as you know, to really find that time because you can't work all the time. So one of the main things that I do is I really map out everything throughout my whole year. So it takes a lot of time and energy, but I go as far to map out our editing schedule. So specifically for every single wedding, this is day one, this is day two, when our blog posts are going up, when all of that. So that way we can get a real clear vision of what our year is going to look like. And I feel like I'm actually really lucky in a lot of ways because I can really map out, okay, hey, this is the week of 4th of July. This is my summer week that I take off. Okay, I'm not booking any weddings that week. I can map out, all the school vacations. So it's kind of, I guess, a lot up front. It can take me, a good solid day of kind of going through. But once I get, a vision of like, okay, this is how many weddings we have and when everything is going to happen, then I can also map out my session schedule around that. So, you only offer up when you want to be available for people. So with that, like our sessions, we only take sessions on weekdays and weekday evenings. So, if I have a Saturday off, I'm not taking sessions. I'm at home. I'm living my life. Yeah. So I'm sure in some ways, we could potentially be losing clients in a way, but at the same time, when you explain that very honestly to your clients, they understand like, oh yeah, you guys shoot weddings too. Oh no, that makes sense. We'll do a session on a weekday or, the nice part is in the summer months, the sun is going down at, 7:30 at night. Most people can do a session in the evening after work. So, it's just really being clear to people about why. And, people are very reasonable if you just kind of explain, hey, this is why.
No, it's communication. You're managing expectations proactively, and you're doing it with a smile, so it's making it easier to take that information in. So a few kind of follow-up questions, thoughts here. First of all, you mentioned mapping out the year, and is this something that you literally do at the beginning of the year for the whole year? Are you doing it once a week or once a month? What does that look like?
It sounds crazy, but I do it at the beginning of the year for the entire year.
Wow.
So I would say most of our weddings, most of our clients book like a year to 2 years out for weddings, right? So that's like the main thing that I'm looking at. And so then I literally go through, okay, this is, day one here, it's just really literally blocking out every single day for my editors, for myself. But that's part. And maybe I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but that's part of what my business idea was. Hey, we're going to have a bunch of people that can all work normal hours in running a photography studio because it's a lot for one person. So, I map out my associate photographers' days off, their vacations, their important events. And then, we even say, okay, I can do 2 late nights a week. These are the days that I do. And so with my associates, we don't schedule appointments for them on their days that are not their days to come into the office. So it is a lot of work up front, but I think it really pays off because it makes it easy for anybody to answer the phone and schedule appointments too,
But you said something that was really important. I want our listeners to kind of hone in on this. We talk a lot about the idea of establishing a big picture view, this kind of overarching set of goals for our personal life that then drives what we want to do in business, which guides us to develop the appropriate business model. And you said from the outset that you wanted to create a business model that enabled the photographers in studio to be able to have normal hours. And this may seem like a simple notion, but the fact that you decided that up front then guides your decision-making beyond that, or your activities beyond that. And this is, when we talk about time management here on the podcast, what enables effective time management is knowing what it is that you're actually reaching for. And that's one of the elements anyway. And if you don't have a clear idea of what you're trying to accomplish, then time management can seem extremely chaotic and haphazard, and you don't quite know where to start. If you know what it is you're reaching for, it makes it so much easier. So I think it's important to note that. We actually have a system in place for our premium membership of Photographers Edit that enables them to schedule orders in advance. And what that then enables is a faster turnaround time. What's interesting to see in response to that system as we began to implement it was the kind of the apprehension or even disagreement in approach, if you will, to this idea of scheduling an order in advance. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that photographers tend to kind of function in a haphazard manner. They're used to just going with whatever is happening in the moment and reacting to things coming in. And again, that's why a lot of photographers end up working insane number of hours in a week and don't have a ton of freedom. It's because they haven't established ahead of time what they're doing, why they're doing it, and then enabling that to guide their schedule so they can actually create time for themselves. So I think about a tool that I use. In fact, I think in scheduling our podcast interview, Jodi, called Calendly. And it enables me to decide ahead of time, kind of like you're alluding to, what segments of my week I want to have podcast interviews in, and it blocks off the rest of the time. And then that enables me to certainly schedule those interviews, but not to get burnout in the process. And again, this just has to do with being proactive about what it is that you want. And then the tool enables you to make it happen. So this is a really great, again, piece of advice for our listeners. For those of you listening in, it's a philosophical principle that can trickle down to the way that you actually manage your time. Huge. If you're not implementing this in your business now, make sure you go and do that. Talk to me a little bit about a self-help book, a business book, something that you've read or listened to, Jodi, that has been particularly impactful to you.
So this is going to be really embarrassing, but I really just don't read. I was thinking about this and I'm like, wow, that's probably going to show in my interview.
Well, no, I mean, I have to jump in here really quick though and say that the irony, of course, is that despite the fact that reading is not a thing for you, you've created a successful business. So I guess maybe the better question in this case is, how do you learn? Is it just simply through experience? Do you get advice from others? Have you had mentors? What does that process look like?
Yes. So yes, I listen to a lot of other photographers. I go to seminars, and then I'm constantly reevaluating my process. Hey, what worked? What didn't work?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, it's probably to the point of where some of my associates get annoyed, like, we just started doing it this way. Why are we changing it? I'm like, I'm always trying to make things better and easier for everyone. And so, it's kind of always evolving, always learning. As cool as you think you are, I think a lot of times as photographers, there's always something to learn. So I think for me, it's really important going to classes, listening to seminars, all of that, because, if you're not willing to change and evolve and grow and make smarter decisions, you're going to get lost. So for me, I want to do this for as long as I possibly can. So I want to listen to what other people have to say, because honestly, other people have way more to experiences than I have. So, why not follow along with, hey, this is what's worked for this person, and go from there.
Well, I have a lot of respect for the humility innate to what you just said. Truly, I do, though. Yeah. And I mean, because that does make a difference, right? If we assume that we kind of know everything, or we know what we need to, and who is this person to tell me, then that really can get in the way of potentially, even if it's just pulling a tidbit of conversation that we can go apply to our business. If we go to a conference or we listen to a podcast or otherwise, then that could potentially propel us forward even just a little bit. So that keeping that open-mindedness and then a desire, a curiosity to learn and to grow. I can very much relate to what you're saying about making constant change in your team's response, because I'm sure that my team, who, I mean, countless times over the last 10 plus years has said something similar. Because I think at the end of the day, it really is important to iterate and to be open to what the market is saying, and working to continue to improve the experience. And if we don't, we really can get lost and even behind the market. So it's important to keep that open-mindedness. And again, I have a lot of respect for that. So kudos to you for that. Talk to me about photography. You are a photographer. I mean, you have a team, but you still shoot quite a bit. What is one of the most unusual items in your camera bag? And again, this doesn't have to be a lens or a camera, otherwise something that enables you to be a better photographer.
Okay. Yes. So I thought about this, and I think my best tool that has saved me in so many situations are gear ties.
Really? Okay.
Yes, I know it sounds silly, but you can fix, a piece of equipment that falls, or, like your flash mount, whatever. Yeah. You just need to be able to fix something in a pinch. So yeah, I use your basic, photo equipment, but I would say that and some chapstick will go a long way. On a wedding day, you just,
Isn't it funny though, how the simplest things like that can make such a big difference?
Oh yeah. I mean, what are you going to do if your cold shoe breaks on a wedding day and I have to, gear tie my flash to a light stand? It works. It's great.
100%. That's great. All right. Well, I'm sure Haley can find some gear ties that we can link to in the show notes. And by the way, any of the resources that we do mention today, and of course, Jodi's website, studio website, and Instagram, we'll put all this in the show notes. If you go to Bokeh, Bokeh podcast.com, make sure to take advantage of the show notes there. Jodi, let's just jump right into kind of our main topic, our main focus for the day, which has to do with how to go about building a big photography business. And I'd love for you to give context to our listeners. Big can mean different things to different people. How many weddings and portrait sessions did your business photograph in 2018?
Sure. Yeah. So we did 80 weddings last year.
Wow.
Yeah. And then we did a little over 250 sessions. So, and, as it's looking now, we're about a quarter of the way through the year at this point, and we're up to 110 sessions for this year. So we're definitely growing.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how many photographers is that spread out amongst?
Yep. So there's 3 of us that are the main core members, I guess. But then we do have associate photographers that are our second shooters on wedding days. And, but it's myself and 2 other photographers that are doing the majority of the photography. So, yeah.
Does that, I mean, even with 3 photographers, it seems like that would be overwhelming to handle that number of clients. Does it ever feel that way?
No, I don't know.
Really?
No, I really do not get overwhelmed by it, because again, we're really organized over here. Okay. So, myself, I photograph usually about 35, 40 weddings, kind of max a year. And then between my 2 other photographers, they're kind of splitting the rest. So, and it's not just, hey, contact us and, you get who you get. I mean, it's almost like we're all running our own individual business through the Millyard brand. So if Amanda is going to be, potentially photographing a wedding, she's meeting with that client. She's doing her meetings with them, their engagement sessions, so it's not like I have to do everything, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's really, we're a collaboration.
Yeah.
And we're all, we're sharing information. Hey, this is the timeline that we're kind of working with. What would you do? And then, it's really just kind of, seeing where each other need help and helping each other.
And you can only have that kind of freedom, that flexibility, and that type of workflow if you're willing to, again, acknowledge the fact that you're not the only one that knows how to be a photographer, a good photographer at that. Like, you can actually freely delegate to your team, right?
100%. And then it allows us to focus on, as far as the sessions go, what specific genres, we're interested in.
Okay.
So that's helpful too. So, Amanda loves doing the boudoir sessions, and I do them as well, but it's nice to kind of, say, hey, I'm a little bit busy right now. We have some potential clients coming in, and she'll scoop up some of those sessions and vice versa. So we kind of got each other's back, which has been really nice.
By the way, I have to compliment you on using the French pronunciation boudoir versus what we normally say boudoir, which is, it reminds me. So I grew up in Japan. I don't know if you know this. I've mentioned it on the podcast before, but there are certain words that we say in American culture. For example, karaoke is in Japanese is actually karaoke. And it is a Japanese word, but we go karaoke or futon. Like I went and sat on that futon. It's not futon. It's actually futon.
Futon.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So just little things like that. And you kind of have to laugh, but thank you for putting the correct pronunciation of the word that we normally pronounce boudoir.
Or boudoir. Sometimes we get that and I'm like, oh, okay.
How cute.
I know what you're saying.
That's funny. Yeah. Actually, to that point, and I've mentioned this before, but Bokeh, we call this the Bokeh Podcast. Mm-hmm. It's actually also originally a Japanese word, Bokeh. But if I were to go around saying it that way, I mean, the looks or responses that I would get would probably be kind of funny. So we keep it simple. We just call it Bokeh.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
So as far as your business model is concerned, when you started your photography business, did you set out to create a big business, or was this something that just kind of happened along the way? What did that look like?
So honestly, from the very beginning, I was like, why are photographers all competing with each other? I'm friends with a lot of photographers, and I just felt like, I don't know everything. Why don't we just kind of get together and kind of figure this out along the way together? So, I mean, it started out as me, and then it did evolve. I kind of brought people on. It's not like I started with, hey, I'm going to hire a bunch of people. But it was always with the notion that, I want to have a company that's sustainable. I want to have, potentially a retirement.
Yeah, that would be good.
So I wanted to create a business that it wasn't just me, and that's been really helpful in, types of, you never know what's coming down the pike. If you're, an emergency, a sickness or anything like that, I wanted to have not only for myself, but for our clients too. Like they like to invest in a company that is sustainable and they feel that security and value in that. So that was always my idea, that, we should really all be working together to kind of help each other out. And then, like I said before, nobody wants to work a million hours. When I had worked for other companies and kind of was piecing everything together, and I thought, wouldn't it be great if you could just work for one company and do a little bit of everything? So that's kind of how it evolves. Second photographers, after shooting with me for years, it's kind of like, okay, well, let's evolve and let's kind of move you to the next phase. Or maybe they come in as a studio assistant or, so it's not just hire anybody and we shoot anything. No, we're very picky. We're very particular about what we do, but, I can't take credit for everything. I mean, it really is like a collaboration of all of us putting our heads together and making the best decisions we can.
You mentioned the word sustainable, which is, again, not a word I think that a lot of photographers include in their vocabulary when they're considering how to go about running their business. But if we want to minimize burnout, if we want to have a life that goes beyond, sitting in front of a computer, editing or doing email or whatever it might be. We do have to kind of keep in mind that concept of a sustainable business that isn't simply reliant on just you, the individual. And there are different ways we can go about doing this. I understand the significance of brands that are driven by a particular face of a brand, but if we want to create more freedom in our lives as business owners, it's important to keep this in mind. And there's a book that I've mentioned on the podcast a number of times before, but it's called The E-Myth, or The E-Myth Revisited. There are a couple of versions. But for those of you who listening in have not read that book or listened to that book before, I'd highly recommend picking up a copy, because you do want to think about the long term. And it's just about trying to make it through the year, but where is this business going, and how will I be able to create a sustainable business that certainly will generate an income for me, but will also give me freedom, and it'll give me flexibility, and do so for the long run. So highly recommend that book. We'll link to that in the show notes as well. Can you remember kind of a turning point where you started bringing on additional photographers? Did it happen right away? Was it a gradual process?
It's kind of a gradual process, but I mean, I would say, I started the business and, I didn't have, a studio or anything like that. And then just over time, I just kept growing and saying, wow, I'm getting a lot of inquiries. I can't possibly do all of these. Or, there was a time where I was trying to shoot, 50 or so weddings a year. And I just sort of, said, well, let's not do that. So it's just been, like a gradual, process of kind of, sort of filling the needs. We're getting a lot more sessions. I needed to have a specific session editor and kind of go from there.
And was there, you mentioned the I guess how picky you are ultimately in the photographers that you bring on, but is there a process that you go about in the interviewing of these photographers, or a selection process? Is there a way that you find a good photographer?
Yes. So, we do interview with people, but I like to work with people, so I might kind of bring somebody in as like an assistant or, So I just, we got to make sure that everybody gets along and we're all, but again, everybody's has previous experience as well, that I've worked with. So I can't teach people photography right out of the gate. You have to have had either an education, been doing it for a long time. Yeah, that's really important to me, is that they have to have already a set of skills, and maybe even be at the point of, I don't want to do this on my own. I've definitely had people reach out and say, I've been a photographer for this, many years, and I don't want to run my own business. They're like, great. I understand why.
100%. Yeah. I mean, there's still some days where I'm like, man, the idea of going to work for somebody else and not having all the responsibility that I have.
I know. Yeah. And then it lasts. Yeah.
It is appealing for sure. But you talked about the significance of working with somebody versus just interviewing them. I was just having a very similar conversation with a photographer yesterday. And he was talking about the fact that he's looking for someone for his business, for his studio, and how they're going through this interview process, and how, like a 30 to 60 minute conversation in the form of a quote interview, like your traditional interview, just really doesn't cover the bases. You want to be able to enjoy being with this person, and then of course effectively work together too.
Yes, absolutely. We have to be able to have a cup of coffee and be able to shoot a wedding together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, I really try not to have any sort of ego, and that's a big one for me too. I'm like, let's just take it down a notch. It's really important to me that, people are just humble and cool and but also want to learn things. I find that that's really important when I've been looking for jobs prior, to starting the business, that I want to make sure that coming here and working, that you're getting something out of it too. So, maybe I've always had an interest in photographing newborns, let me start out assisting and so on, So when I say that they have to have a background in photography, it's like, you have to know how a camera works, but I understand I'm here to also, teach. It's very rewarding to me too, for people to get something out of working with me. So
that's really cool. I like that mentality. It reminds me actually of my friend Sean Austin, who's the CEO over at Kiss Books. And he has really put a lot of emphasis in the process of developing his company and the team at his company, of investing in the employees that he works with. And I have a lot of respect for that. You could hire somebody and give them a paycheck and be done, or you can actually go beyond that and try to make an impact on someone's life. And I think running a business with an emphasis on that, whether it's with clients or your employees, I just think it's the way to go. It's so much more fulfilling.
Definitely. And we review each other's work together as a team a lot. We go over all sorts of information together all the time. So that way, I might, like I said before, I don't know everything. So we're really kind of figuring it out together. I really love that. What was your technique on that? And it keeps us all humble too, to kind of go through and look at each other's work and say, I might have done that, or, So it's really it's a good team mentality over here.
Love it. And by the way, for those of you listening in, you can actually see a picture of the team if you go to Millyard, just like it sounds, studios.com, and then the About Us section there, you can see a picture of the team there. But let's make this really practical and tangible for our listeners. What are some important principles that have enabled you to build such a large business? Because I understand that probably for most photographers in our industry, it's not their natural inclination to think about systems and a team and how to go about managing 80, 100 weddings or a couple hundred portrait sessions. It's just that idea seems extremely overwhelming to them. But I wonder too if part of the reason that there is a sense of overwhelm there is just a lack of understanding about how to go about that process, like what actually makes it attainable or feasible. So I'm wondering if you could share a few important principles that have enabled you to build such a big business.
Absolutely. So clarity for me, I think, is really, really important. You have to be really clear with your clients. You have to have really set packages, very specific, important information that gets delivered to them every single time. So, we put together a whole magazine for every genre of photography that we offer that kind of goes over, this is what you should expect. This is when your photos will be ready. You can't just make things up or, say, you should get your photos in about this amount of time. Like, I think for me, I would want to know, when am I going to get that sneak peek, or when am I going to have my photos ready? What's the process for your album design? So we're really upfront and very clear with our clients from the get-go. This is what we do. This is when you would expect your images. And it's a very basic concept too, but it's, the under promise, over deliver. I mean, it's just how it works best. I mean, I never want someone to come back and say, well, you said this, but that's not what happened. That to me, I can't live with that.
Well, and another C word that comes to mind here is consistency. Consistency in the delivering of a particular experience, which represents your brand. So you're clearly communicating up front, and then you're consistently delivering on your word, which is sadly, I don't know, is something that is the norm these days. So actually following through on what you say you're going to do is really important. And I have a lot of respect for that. Okay, so clarity is a first step. Would you say too, like when you're saying clarity, I mean clarity too in the way that you communicate with your team and managing their expectations, because managing a team is not something that I think a lot of people are familiar with.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, there are, everything is really specific. These are the hours that we operate. Yes, very clear with the people that I work with and definitely with the clients as well. And the thing is that if you're constantly reiterating this information to your staff, then it's very easy and very natural for them to also be able to communicate that with your clients as well if you're not in the office. So it's very specific details that, it just becomes second nature for everyone.
Did you develop a handbook of sorts for your team, or did you just kind of outline those principles and, like you said, consistently communicate them to your team so that there's no confusion?
Exactly. Yes, we do have Word documents that we kind of go through and everything. But yeah, for the most part, it's just really about, once you're in here, you're kind of getting right involved in the experience, and it becomes pretty clear as the more you're here.
Okay. All right. Well, that's really great. Yeah. So clarity is the number one principle. What's another one?
Mm-hmm. Okay. So for me, this is really important. I think you really need to listen. You need to listen to your clients and what is important to them. So for me, if I'm potentially meeting with a wedding client, everybody has something that's a little bit more important than other things on their wedding day.
Right.
And so for me, I'm just kind of talking towards what's important to them, because it's something that we already do, but you kind of want to hear what is important to them and then tell them why what you do is going to work for them. So a perfect example of that would say, maybe I'm at a bridal show and a bride's feeling very overwhelmed by, I don't know what to do. And, there seems like there's so much to go on a wedding day. And how do we do that? I kind of would talk to her about how we're really big planners, that, we've been doing it for a long time. So we'll be able to guide you through like how long certain events are going to take, when these things happen. So for me, then I'm also taking a lot of notes on that, this couple is really uncomfortable in front of the camera. Okay. That's a very normal one. We all kind of are, right? But
right.
I might write that down. And then, also engaging with them, I'll talk about, hey, doing an engagement session is really going to break the ice and kind of get you more comfortable. So I think that it's really listening to what's important to people and then gearing what you do to them. Like, yes, it's still within my style. It's still within my business practices and what we do. But it's, you'd be surprised how many people, like they want great photos, but they really want a great experience. I never say I'm, the world's greatest photographer out there. I mean, I think that we are really good, but at the same time, we want it to be easy so that we're just one less stress in their life, especially, with all the different genres we do. I mean, newborns too. Like, we want to make sure people really understand what that process is going to be like. They want to meet their photographer. We want to, just kind of set those expectations out and knowing that they're in really good hands. So yeah, we're just kind of listening to what's important to them, and then kind of talking about how what we do makes sense for them.
Well, and it's like what you said at the very beginning of our conversation, actually, that it's not about you, it's about the client, about serving them ultimately. And I love that emphasis. Okay. So clarity, and then the significance of listening, knowing and understanding what's important to the client. What's another principle?
That sounds so basic, but just being nice. I can't tell you. I mean, I feel like I've met so many photographers who are very, like, this is my day. Like, these are my photos. For me, it's not about that. I just want to be nice, be able to make my clients happy. I want to be nice to the DJ and to the coordinator and really be respectful to everybody that's involved. So it sounds so silly, but you just have to be kind. And what's nice about that is that I think people want to give you that kindness back when you show them, I really care about you, because I really do. I want them to have the best experience. I want them to have beautiful photos. Here's how we're going to do it. It's crazy, but I'm definitely not a diva. I want to just make sure, for me, the most rewarding part, and same with my associates, we want that feedback after the wedding. Oh, we had such a great time, and wow, we love our photos. That to me is all the payment in the world,
I love it. I talk about the fact that on this podcast, we don't necessarily share earth-shattering concepts. It's about emphasizing and re-emphasizing the important ones, the ones that make a big difference. And when we're talking about the significance of being clear, be clear, listen, be nice, or be kind. These are very simple principles, but the reality is that if we actually implement them consistently, it can make a really big difference. If somebody's like, Jodi shoots 80 weddings a year and 200 portrait sessions, she must have some secret sauce. And
nope.
they're waiting to hear that big secret. And yet they're led to find out that these basic principles, which are just hugely important, are what has ultimately made the difference for you. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Trust me, like, anybody could do it. It's really that simple if that's what you want, Yeah, I don't have any earth-shattering concepts over here.
Well, and to be clear, that was not at all a criticism. This is a compliment to the fact that you've actually put emphasis on what matters in the end. I think it's a really wonderful example for our listeners.
Yeah, very, very achievable. Be nice.
For sure. Now, I do have one kind of follow-up question, though, because I'm curious, especially with the amount of growth that you saw, and you put your pricing right out there on your website. So, for example, wedding collections range from $2,800 to $6,800. Just looking at the data that I've seen anyway, that still puts you in the upper end. But when you have newborn prices there and in studio, Looks like the session fee for newborn is $300, a reservation is $200 for families, etc. And for those of you listening in, you can go look at this information there on the site. But did pricing play any role, do you think, in the quick growth that you saw? For example, when I'd started at an extremely low price. And of course, that enabled me to be able to book a lot of weddings quickly at our studio. But did you follow the same approach? What part, I guess, does pricing play, do you think, in the number of events and sessions that you're shooting a year?
Yes. Okay. So yeah, I did not start out super inexpensive.
Okay.
I kind of thought right out of the gate, well, how many clicks on my camera is that going to be? Okay. Like this camera is really expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of, so I don't think that it really matters how good or not good you are right out of the gate, is that you need to set a value that is going to make you money, which is what you need to do. Yeah. So, we have raise prices over time, but we don't do them in a way that's just astronomical. That's going to blow the water, blow some of our previous clients out of the water. We want them to be able to still understand, we're growing. And again, kind of going back to clear communication, we really haven't had clients come back and get upset if we raised our prices over the years and they've been with us from the very beginning. So we're not a very cheap company. We have a lot. Yeah. On average, I would say our wedding clients are spending between $3,500 and $5,500 in our wedding packages. Wow. Yeah. So, but again, we have options for people that are going to work that, starting out at $2,800, that's still above, an inexpensive price point, but it's still achievable. So I think by not scaring people away by saying, most of our clients spend $5,500, we're kind of saying there definitely are options. There's something in here if you want to have great photos, come in and meet with us. And then, so then they can kind of go from there. I'm not sure I answered your question correctly though.
Oh, no, totally. I just kind of wanted your perspective and I guess ultimately your experience in that process, because to book that many sessions a year, if somebody were to tell me that they were shooting, $1,000, $1,500 weddings, which by the way are necessary. I won't even say an evil, they're necessary for a certain segment of the U.S. market. I wouldn't be necessarily as surprised if I were to hear that as somebody who is charging the price point that you do, which already puts you up in the kind of top 10 to 15% or so, maybe even less, depending on the price that you're getting. And so it's interesting to hear that you've been able to book that many weddings, that many portrait sessions at that price point. It speaks loudly to potentially the market that you're in, certainly, but also to the experience that you're providing, that the people are willing to pay that and likely refer others to you to pay that kind of fee. And but I was just curious to get your take on the topic.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the biggest thing for us are referrals. That's that, which is awesome. People want to be able to have a great experience. That's at the end of the day, I think that's the most valuable thing that you can offer your clients is a really easy experience because honestly, people are so busy, and they just want to get the information and, kind of have their hand held through the process a little bit. And again, there's no sneakiness about what we do. We're very this is our pricing. This is what we do. This is what you need. For me, I also want to think about if I were to be getting married, what are the things that I would want out of my photographer? And so those are the things that the must-haves that I include in the packages, and I explain why that's important. And I think our clients go, that absolutely makes sense.
That makes sense. I think,
yeah.
Well, there's that empathy again, though, too. You're thinking about what would make a good experience for them, and part of that is based on your experience, and that you can relate to them in that way, I think is impactful. But this has been a really great conversation, and definitely a valuable conversation at that. Jodi, I really appreciate you making time for us. Can you just share briefly one more time where our listeners can find you online, your website and social media, so they can kind of follow what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is Millyard Studios. So .com. We're on Facebook, Instagram. Yeah. So it's all just Millyard Studios.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for your time. This has really been a valuable conversation all around.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to the Bokeh Podcast today. Will you let us know what you think by leaving a review of the podcast in iTunes or maybe in the Apple Podcast app? And I'd love to hear from you personally with your thoughts about the podcast, maybe suggestions about future topics and guests for the show. My direct email is nathan@photographersedit.com. The Bokeh Podcast is brought to you by Photographers Edit, custom image editing for the wedding and portrait photographer. Just visit photographersedit.com.